All right, Henry, it's good to have you back again. I noticed you got into a conversation with ALW on Twitter not too long ago. You want to elaborate on that?
Oh yeah, sure. It's great to be back. And Ars Cryptotica, episode 3, right?
Yep, yep.
Before I get into that, I just want to say after that, let's talk about some guests that we have coming on the show over the next few weeks. I think we're at 3 or 4 different guests that we have coming on, so that's pretty exciting. Talking about all different things and directions and whatnot. Okay, so ALW. So I've been thinking, in this work that I've been doing with the university system, developing art for mental health awareness. We talked about the concept last week. And, recently, again, joining another platform, bringing my work and my sensibility to Refinable, previously to Uptick, to Rarible, and Mintable, et cetera, et cetera. I'm realizing that, and we've touched on this, the sort of the immaturity of the space in general as it is now. It's being set up, it's being corporatized, it's being platformed to be a kind of capitalistic mechanism for buying and selling collectibles or monetizing, real life events through tickets as NFT, etc. And I was having this conversation with the university professor, John, who's going to be a guest on the show, about how difficult it is at the moment, as these platforms are designed, to really present a message, right? An art-based message for social justice or for, bettering humanity, or raising awareness of crisis, raising awareness of mental health, because the platforms as they're designed are just very mechanistically about, like flipping houses. Like here's this digital NFT immaterial, image on the blockchain. Here's your digital rights to this image, and now you hold it and or go sell it. And it's sort of like, bam, there's not really any there's nothing in the mechanism to further the dialogue, right? You just have to depend on your social media as an artist to sort of like be an extension of what you're doing on the platforms. So the conversation I was having was it was spurred on by, somebody said, I don't trust when an artist says, I'm going to donate the proceeds of the sale of my art to a charity, because there's no way of proving that, in the provenance of the work's sale, how does the collector know for sure that collection goes to the charity that was sort of marketed to bring people to the work in the first place? And really, when I think about the history of art and what art has always been, as this sort of like guide to transforming culture, like slowly over time, generationally, art contributes to radical change in society, right? It's sort of always behind cultural revolutions. It's always supporting Black Lives Matter. It supports, the civil rights movement, suffragists, whatever the crisis of the day is. In hot, I can remember when I was in Israel, on a border check, there was a performance artist putting on a very risky performance of tolerance, standing in the face of some Israeli military police at the checkpoint. So Palestinian Israelites that live in and around Jerusalem, and really that whole area between Jerusalem and Gaza, it's a whole thing is very militarized, and they kind of there's a lot of oppression. And so in order for you to move around as a Palestinian Israelite, you have to carry with you walking papers. Now, walking papers are, famously a mechanism of apartheid. It was, something that you saw in South Africa, where, blacks had to have walking papers, to to move around what was a colonized, dominant white power society at the time. And so this is what's going on in Israel. And I'm at this checkpoint where I'm able to move freely because, I'm non-Arab, Anglo white American male, and I'm walking freely while, the Arab Palestinians are getting stopped and frisked and, checked and argued with and prompted and, it's like, they're running the tag on the car to make sure you don't have an outstanding warrant, and all you're doing is trying to go buy groceries. So all that being said, here's this performer standing in the face of these military police, and they're telling him to step down, and he's not. That's his art. All right. Then that's happening in the moment. And that is an art of protest. And that artist was arrested, and that artist went to jail, and that artist has a record, and that artist will get out of jail and he will do it again because he's protesting injustice. Right. So in that simple gesture of risk, personal risk, is a way in which an individual can contribute to a movement that can contribute to the overcoming of an oppression, right? And, this is what happens around the world in the face of dictators. This is what happens in our neighborhoods in the face of injustice like racism or, homophobia or transgender phobia, right? You're going to have artists doing the things in the moment that are contributing to dialogues about destabilizing the oppressor. And so when you look at that, that's the history of art, right? Art has always been that radical. It has always been that concerned with the moment, with the trials and tribulations of the day. And so most artists in general have a voice that is trying to contribute to the real messages that are needed to be said. And to do that, how does that happen? Well, galleries sort of galvanize the message of the artists that they represent. They organize shows, but they go deeper than the show as on its face, the surface of the show, the look of the show, the gallery space. It's much more than that, because curators, critics, institutions, museums, there's a whole network in the analog art world that is all about and in total complete recognition of the responsibility of whoever is managing the art of the moment to the art historical movement over time, right? So this space, I believe that the NFT as an immaterial evolution in both the art market and the art as a concept to be collected, can have far more significant value to society and in the long run to culture than it is as it is being designed now. So you look at these platforms and they all do the same thing. They allow you to mint a token at whatever cost, depending on which platform you're on or which network, Ethereum or Binance. And they allow you to sell it. And the collectors will buy it and they will try to resell it. And there's like nothing beyond that. So what I had suggested to ALW was, what needs to happen is a platform is designed as an 501c3 nonprofit. On the back end, you have organizations, philanthropic organizations. On the collector side, you have social justice and humanitarian organizations on the seller side. And when you work on this platform as an artist, it is essentially what the analog art world is doing, right? You're building art dialogues that are contributing to human history and helping to evolve and change and impregnate culture with a sensibility to evolve and change. If we have this platform, just sort of like in design, it doesn't need to be so much different than what's happening now, only that let's say on the back end, before this platform launches, you would already have organized, several hundred different organizations that are willing to participate and accept donations in cryptocurrency, which most of the major ones do now already. Probably just Bitcoin or Ethereum, I'm sure BNB, but all this could be managed on the back end. Whatever the currency they accepted would be something that could be exchanged for. But in the platform design, so you have your organization, and then the artist, when they go in and they mint their art, right? It's going to be going into a platform where, by design, the work that sells will contribute either 50, 75, or 100% of the proceeds to an organization that is either pre-selected by the artist, meaning they have an intention to contribute to, say, Greta Thunberg's foundation, or if the creator doesn't select the organization that 100% of whatever the donation amount is goes to, then on the other side of it, when the collector comes, they will have a drop-down menu where there is these hundreds of organizations that the purchase of that work can contribute to. And you could also have it so, the creator can select 5 organizations that they want to donate to. And if they don't, they can open it to the collector to select, say, up to 5. And then mechanistically, the donation would be divided equally, and all this would be automated. And now, if you go on Rarible, you can set the percentage of which, you want to receive as a residual, right? So if you buy the work from me on Rarible, I can set it up as 10% residual. If you sell that work again down the road, I'm going to get a kickback of 10% for you selling it again, right? Same thing, same concept, only here, whatever the percentage is set, and I would say ideologically, the creator would have to choose no less than 50% contribution to make it meaningful. Okay, and I'm perfectly comfortable with 50-50 split, but it has to be at least 50, or you could choose 75, or you could choose 100, right? This will all be built into, that minting application step. And then you would also then, whatever the percentage was set at for donation would be the residual that would have to be donated if it was resold at market. So now the marketplace becomes fully philanthropic, fully humanitarian. And what are you doing? So the biggest argument right now in NFT is that, it's all speculative. There is no real proof of value, right? Everybody's just hoping that the value that people are buying these things for will hold. You could go into, I've gone into chats, like say for Foundation, go on Foundation, and you look at so many people go in there and they're getting into these drops, and they're dropping, they're picking up something for 5 Ether, right? And then 2-3 months later, short-sighted, of course, for even thinking about this 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months later, all of a sudden they can't resell it. Nobody wants to buy it, even for $1 more than they paid for it, because there's no guarantee of value, right? Other than reputation. So in the analog art world, intention builds value. In the digital art world so far, there is no space for intention to become tangible, right? My artistic intention, right, however well-meaning, has no mechanism built into any of these platforms to become tangible. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like I can have the intention to benefit mankind, but there's no way for me to benefit mankind other than to construct this paradigm in my social media world where I'm elaborating on the work that I'm doing, that I'm minting and selling. But beyond that, there's nothing tangible. And that's how we make it tangible. And by making the purchase of an NFT a process by which half of the sale, 75% or 100 is donated. Now you have a use case. Now you have built-in value, right? And in the analog art world, most high-end art, right? This sort of upper echelon, let's say, of the highest, most expensive art that's sold is a lot of times is sold through auctions to raise money for foundations, organizations, 501c3s, because it then becomes a way for that collection of the artwork to become a write-off for the collector, right? So they're doing good by donating, helping raise money for an organization. They're gaining the artwork that they want, right? And in the process, they're gaining also relief on the tax burden, which is fine. So to me, that's what has to happen. We need an NFT platform. We need an NFT space where the traditional sort of intention of art all throughout art history can manifest. And that is to participate in transforming culture. And right now, it is only contributing to the existing culture of capitalistic society, which is fine, but it's like, it's just like a Target or a Walmart. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we can carry on as a consumer culture, but how is that beneficial to humanity? How is that contributing to the art historical narratives that have pushed transformational change throughout history? It won't. It can't, right? And you're not going to get the honest, integrity coming to the space. You're not going to get the great minds of the generation in art, the great talents of the generation in art, right?
Yeah.
The people with the great intention aren't going to come to the space because right now it's just Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you mean, and I'm surprised no one's come up with this yet. I have several follow-up questions. One is, so what you have in mind, is this already exists in the analog world? Would one of those people be, interested in making such a platform, or is it too big of a step for them to switch over?
Well, to be honest, I don't know. This conversation, like I said, it stemmed from a longer conversation with my psychologist friend yesterday at the university. Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact that universities, and what I'm building in the pilot program with St. John Fisher, that's something that's going to gain a lot of respect and a lot of expansion at the university level. And institutions like universities typically prefer, in a lot of cases, only work with 501c3. And when you're doing work like most social justice foundations, regardless of what their focus is, they're all 501c3. And the reason for that is because there's not a lot of, it's all sweat, blood, and tears of intention that the work of social justice, activists, anybody who's an activist is typically not getting paid to be an activist. We're not talking about agitators here. We're talking about activists, people who, when they're not at work, are donating their lives to a cause, right? So that's the reason why the majority of groundwork is done by foundations that are non-for-profit, because they get it's designed in such a way that they can operate at the bare minimum of cost, and so that's really, really important. And I just know that the university system, as I'm working on this pilot program, I see a way in which it can work with a platform like the one I'm envisioning, that there's a way of networking this, of building sort of a satellite of interest around a platform like this, where it doesn't just sit there as an economic, machine. It is a holistic organization of networks, all 501c3, all interrelated in the context of doing good work for humanity. that's yeah. Will the analog art world, would they get involved in this? Yeah, but can I reach the right person? I don't know. I mean, that effort is begun. I'm going to do this. I'm going to at least give it my best effort.
Mm. Maybe the best angle would be to go to one of the existing platforms and explain what you have in mind. And maybe, it's pretty easy for them to just make a few clicks on their app and have some sort of, side program or something. And if there's interest, then they'll keep it going.
You know what? I have thought about that, and I don't think it's the right approach. The reason I say that is because their primary intention was never this. Okay. So already there's in principle, this is something that should start as its own entity with its highest level of integrity. It would need to be run by people like me or like-minded, right? You got to realize that all of the models that are in place, all of these that are existing now, they're capitalistic by design. The people that are running them, great, nothing wrong with it, right? But they're not, if they had this mindset, they would have already done this. So I also don't want to be a subset, right? Like, a little thing that they do. Like I find that in poor taste. I really feel like this is something that could be built very dynamically and could grow to something very, very important.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want it to just be a subset of what they're doing, now.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. But what worries me is it's like asking my mom to like buy Bitcoin or something. There's these different groups. We talked before about the analog people and the digital people. And I think, realistically, the best way to get it done would be to do that, hoping that one of these analog groups or people would suddenly just like learn how to make a website or platform that deals with cryptocurrencies. It's just, do you think it's unrealistic?
No,
Or do you think there's...
No, I don't. I think there are plenty of philanthropic minded millionaires and billionaires in the world who have awareness and interest in crypto. I really think this is as simple as, finding an investor that understands and then bringing that investor to people that can execute it on the dev side. Right. And I'm not saying you have to recreate the wheel. I'm not saying that the refinable dev team couldn't be the dev team that then built out the platform. What I'm saying is I wouldn't want it to be part of refinable. It would have to have its own identity. And, refinable isn't going to, have refinable and then the subset of refinable with its own identity. It's going to be like, okay, click here and you move over to the left into the philanthropic part of refinable. No, that's not interesting. What it needs to happen is, because again, it needs to be 501c3. How you can't have a company that's for profit be also non-for-profit, right? Because in order for this concept, which is very, very much successful in the analog world, to build out that network of organizations and institutions and universities, it would have to be from the ground up, 501c3, nonprofit. And, that's the only way it's going to happen. So it's about finding the investor, which I don't think is impossible. And then from there, bringing it to whatever dev team, you want. I mean, because there's certainly no shortage of dev teams that can build out an NFT marketplace. And it's not like this is that complex. I mean, the real work is going to be on the backside. It'll be organizational with bringing in the foundations to take the donations, right? It's really going to be quite, as far as I'm concerned, it's going to be a very natural and beautiful process. And I think it's going to be another way of legitimizing the NFT space, because then you're going to be able to say to X, Y, and Z organization, this is what we're doing. And, it's for them, it's a no brainer, because they're saying, okay, yeah, I'll accept the donations in Bitcoin or whatever. And all of a sudden now you have 2, 3, 400 organizations that are associated with your NFT platform. All of that brings integrity worldwide. All of that brings in philanthropic interest worldwide. And now all of a sudden you have money that can come to the space for the right reasons, not just to flip the house.
Yeah. Okay. It's much clearer. I don't know why that didn't come to me before, but you're not asking my mom to do this. You're like going to go after Bill and Melinda Gates and see if they're interested in funding the project. That's what you mean, right?
I mean, in abstract, yeah, it's somebody like a Bill and Melinda Gates. I mean, and even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I mean, they can accept donations. You know, the United Nations accepts donations. And I think all of these organizations would be willing and interested to work with a platform that focused on art that was messaged toward transformative dialogues around the issues of the day. I genuinely think that needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it will. Another thing I was thinking of, like these days with everything being digital, a lot of the, collectors or even I think a lot of companies, they would probably be interested in this too. They could, buy NFTs that sort of support the causes that they're interested in and then easily put, a copy of them or like a thing on their blog or their web page and spread the message, keep the dialogue going. I think it has a lot of potential.
It has a lot of potential. Also, just to your point, when I talk about the idea of pushing forward dialogue, there's in society that those dialogues are mostly pushed forward, at the university level or through organizational meetings at the United Nations, things that gain sort of the ethical ground. That happens all around the world every day. With art, it takes like very centralized effort, right? You can't manufacture transformative energy when it's scattered all over the place. You know what I mean? If there's 1,000 individuals with a voice, right now, those 1,000 individuals, as far as I'm just imagining as NFT artists, those 1,000 artists are swimming in the open sea. They're, trying to gain some traction on Rarible amidst a sea of, collectible kitties and cypherpunks, and that's all fine that those things exist. But if we're going to have transformative potential, it needs to be centralized and it needs to be supported. And it needs, like, so you imagine, like, how come there are no, like in the existing platforms, there is no way for an artist. There's, like, I think every artist should, within the context of their profile, should be able to have a blog, should be able to have a podcast, all there and all about the messaging. And there should be, meeting rooms within the platform, digital meeting rooms, right? Like a Telegram meeting room, but within the platform where artists can then organize their thoughts together. If you're going to do a drop, right, that is the concept of the drop. Right now, the concept of the drop is market the hell out of it. And like, let's get, people to do an open auction where we sell as many as we can in an hour of the same thing, right? And that's all for profit and that's all fine. But that's, now you take the drop and it's like in the analog world, we call it a group show, right? So now the drop is a group show, right? Not an individual artist. And that group show could organize the messaging. You could then organize art, the artists that work within the platform can develop this sort of like, multi-pronged approach to developing the dialogue. And then you can have, like you said, companies and universities, and they'll support all that work. And there's great integrity for them in supporting it. It actually becomes a way in which the corporate world can come to the NFT art world. Whereas right now there's no meaning, there's no meaningful reason to, what are you gonna, your Microsoft, what do you care about a cypherpunk? You know what I mean? Like, there's just no rationale to invest in the NFT as it stands right now, except as a speculator on the crypto side. Or if you like, so for instance, I have brought a lot of my analog world collectors to my NFT project. They're willing to do it because they've already collected my artwork for 20 years, and that's fine. But as it stands, they believe in me. They believe in the work. They believe in the vision. They know what I've done. They know how I've contributed in the analog world. So that's the people that are buying my work right now. But I want the work in the NFT space to get to that place that we just discussed.
If someone listening to this has ideas, they should like send you a message on Twitter, or what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I would email me at artforanarchistsnft@gmail.com.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes. Cool, cool. What else came to mind? So in the last couple of episodes, we were talking about what art is, and first I thought it was storytelling. Then last episode, I kind of changed my way of thinking about it. It seems to be something that's evolving. And today you said it's more about protesting. And when you said that, I thought about, there's famous pictures of self-emulation, the Napalm Girl. I can't remember the names of the paintings or the photographers, but there's a World War II beach photographer. There's some famous scenes, and I totally agree. That's ways of getting a dialogue going. But then on the other hand, like over here in Japan, I don't go to that many museums, but the last one I went to, there was some exhibition. There's an Italian painter. His name's a bit hard, Archimbolo. He does like the vegetable face paintings. And in that sense, like, is that a form of protest, or was he trying to get dialogue going, or is that a little bit different? That sort of, the traditional classical painters from Europe.
Some art, well, all art really, most art, I should say, is in some way, shape, or form in a conversation with the past, right? So when I say art is protest, I mean, I'm speaking to a particular mode of art, right? All art is not protest, but art as a vehicle for change, there is a large category and a large history, an important history within of art affecting change, art as activism, art in protest of injustice. That is a whole very, very important category of art. What it comes down to is intention. So art is all about intention, and art unto itself is a mode of intention. So what the artist intends is forethought, right? It's built out of their life experience, their life story, their education, their ups and downs, their traumas, their mental health, their whatever. So if you take all of what makes a human, a sensual being, right? That all folds into the intention of the artists as it comes through their art. So you brought up this Italian artist who produces paintings. I don't know this work, but you're saying it's vegetables turned into people.
Yeah, like the nose is an eggplant, and they uses all these vegetables, and it makes a face. The face, like from a distance, looks like a real face, but if you get up close, you can see it's a bunch of like vegetables or fruit. Right? There's different ones, but or it could be like maybe like some of Michelangelo's paintings. When you look at them, they're beautiful, but I don't know if Michelangelo had a message in his paintings or.
Well, he surely did. I mean, because he was able to represent the pinnacle of the human spirit, right? As creativity is essential to mankind. I mean, it's the idea. Michelangelo, you got to remember, was painting for the Vatican. I mean, Michelangelo was working for God's right-hand man, and in that regard, how influential has the Vatican been on humankind in the last thousands of years. How influential was Christ on humanity in the context of Christ, in relationship to Allah, or the Brahmin, or, you have to understand that you just can't look at a painting and see paint on a canvas. You have to look at the context that it fits into human history, right? What was Michelangelo doing? When was he doing it? How far removed from the Crusades, the Christian Crusades, when, people were being lynched because they weren't Christian and wouldn't convert, right? And this is a good religion. Christ was a meaningful prophet. They all are meaningful prophets, but there's a context to everything. And so art is, at its pinnacle, is engaging the whole moment. You have to realize how big every instant of human history has been. All of that happens right now. Like, I just posted a triptych yesterday on Refinable that was an emotional reaction to waking up on my birthday to hearing about a friend asking me if I would literally take his children for him because his wife was on a ventilator and he was sick as hell, and he's living in India. And I'm like, what the hell? I hadn't been paying attention to the news, and there's 325,000 new cases from Thursday to Friday of COVID-19, and bodies are piling up in the streets. There are mass cremations happening. It's unbelievable, the scene that's unfolding. It's apocalyptic, right? So am I able to change the COVID positivity rate by making 3 works of art and posting them on Twitter? No. But am I able to scream from the top of my lungs, from the highest mountain peak, hey, what is going on here? Because that means something more than just, oh, well, COVID is really bad over there. The environmental conditions might be perfect for, the positivity rate. No, the reason why it's going bananas in India right now is because of politics. It's because of an ancient caste system that's now outlawed, but that has 2/3 of the Indian population living in poverty and standards that in the Western world we can't even fathom. And those people have no access to vaccines, because guess who's getting the vaccines? Well, it's the people. I know the caste system is no longer legal, but guess what? It's like slavery is no longer legal in the United States, but we're still seeing the ramifications of slavery here in 2021.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not that art is only protest. It's that art is always in dialogue with the time and place, right? If it's meaningful, if it's informative, if it's, again, what is art? Let's add another layer to what is art. Art is engaging in its time and place necessarily. Else, it isn't art. I will say that. I will stand behind that if you're a young artist right now and you're not thinking about your time and place, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to dialogue. You have to be in dialogue with your time and place. You should be paying attention. You should be contributing. You should have intention.
Yeah.
Right? Beyond money.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I don't have much follow-up there, but I in the last week, personally, I picked up a digital tablet. I kind of thought I would get into not drawing people, but maybe doing some designs for the internet. And I discovered there's another group of people that I wasn't aware of before that are really into the anime drawing, and they're quite talented. But based on what you just said about art there, they're in it for the money. I think they're in it for the beauty. It's their hobby. They're very interested. But would anime be considered art, or?
I really do consider it a subset of art. Now, the reason why is because genuine lineage in how it sort of evolved out of, historical Japanese art. I mean, there, especially, I can't think of the creator's name, Totoro. He was a very famous Japanese.
Maybe Miyazaki. I think Totoro was
it is. I think it is. So, I remember when my children were young, my daughter, who just actually graduated with her master's at University of Pittsburgh, I can say probably she was about 5, was so enchanted by Totoro. And, that's sort of the seeds of today's anime, which, I think there's a lot of pros and cons. My teenagers now are obsessed with anime. So interesting that you brought up anime. But the anime that they're watching is kind of reminds me of like Pulp Fiction and something Quentin Tarantino would write the script for. It's extremely fantastical. It's very violent. All of the figures are very sexualized. And, even for being young figures in an animation, or what we would call historically a cartoon, although I'm glad that they're calling it anime, only because they're bringing to it more realistic figuration. So animated, right? Animated figures versus cartoon-ish figures. So cartoon doesn't really imply figurative. So anyway, yes, anime has a great history, and it evolved out of Japanese art forms, and it has a particular cultural take that's also, and I've never been to Japan. I know you live in Japan, but I know that it's rooted in the sense and sensibility, there. It absolutely has to be, because it's so unique, and it hasn't evolved out of any place else. You see? So there's a genuineness to it. There's a kind of beautiful, centered, organic, principled uniqueness that is undeniable. And in that way, it's just organic. And it as a voice, as an artistic voice, collectively, anime speaks. Is it all about its aesthetics? I don't think so. I think it really plays on the psychology of societal norms and extremes. Like you get these narratives that play off of like a lot of mythology comes to play, a lot of history, sort of reimagining historical events comes to play. You definitely get a lot of 20th century cinema tropes, like cinematic tropes, things that you would have seen in movies in the 20th century are getting folded into the anime. And, yeah, I definitely see anime as a pure art form for sure. And I also see it as being a like loud bullhorn document of a generation of kids that are so different from my generation. I mean, it's I don't know what they call the generation of kids who are 12, 13, 14 now. Do you?
Yeah, I lost track. I don't know. But after the millennials, right?
Yeah, after the millennials. I mean, these kids, think about their lives. And I don't know what their kids' lives are like in Japan, but I can tell you that they're hyper aware of everything: violence, sexuality, drugs, death, and anxiety, mental health, climate crisis, political unrest, racism, sexism, genderism. They're my 13-year-old is, I don't know how their heads don't explode, because they've grown up with social media, and you watch TikTok for an hour and it's like, oh my God. So think about what it's like to be a kid that has had limitless access for their entire life to information. When I grew up, my access to information was sitting in front of a television.
Yeah.
If I wanted to.
Going to the library.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Maybe we should wrap this up pretty soon. At the beginning, we didn't have a traditional start, but you mentioned that there may be some special guests coming on. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. So, uh, two of the university professors that I'm working with at St. John Fisher, we're going to have them on to discuss mental health and awareness art, the project itself specifically. And I'm also going to bring to bear in that conversation um, exactly what we were talking about today, and fundamentally how important it is that we find a way to develop an NFT platform that is more traditionally aligned with art historical precedents, where you have networks of organizations supporting the concepts, supporting the artists, and supporting the missions. All with great intention. So that'll be that focus in that conversation, and then I'm waiting to hear the date, but one of the maybe next week actually, the co-founder Nicholas Chan of Refinable is going to come on and talk about Refinable, talk about the NFT market, his platform, his vision, etc. So we'll have Nicholas Chan on. There is an activist for women's rights and Black Lives Matter, very, very deeply rooted in a lot of different movements in the United States for positive change for Black and brown bodies, oppressed Black and brown bodies, the issues of the day. She's brilliant, well connected, just activist who has her own 501c3. She runs a great organization. We're going to talk about her organization. I have been put on shows with her in support of Black Lives Matter. Last show we did was 2016. We're actually trying to get a show organized for 2021. That would be analog, of course. And she's going to come on and really, that will be a great conversation, because her and I have been having dialogues for years, probably half a decade, about art and activism. And that'll be really eye-opening, because she has a lot to contribute. And then I have another artist friend in mind to come on the show. His name's Daniel. He's out of New York City. He is an artist that came up with the street art movement, who was friends with a lot of the artists of the day, Keith Haring, Basquiat, quite successful in his own right, considers himself an outsider artist. But I think the interesting conversation with him is that he's outside the NFT market considering coming in. And I think that's a nice conversation to have, because we want to ultimately try to bring, the traditional analog artists to the NFT space, especially in the context of this platform that I was discussing. And, how do we go about convincing somebody like Daniel, who, isn't here, to be here, and what are his challenges in thinking about that? I just think that's a good conversation to have. And so we have those four that we're lining up. Exactly which order they're going to come, I'm not 100% sure yet, because that we have to do this on Saturday morning at 9:30 because you're in Japan and I'm in New York, is an interesting time for people to have, to be available, let's just say. And so, like, for instance, Refinable, Nicholas Chan is out of Hong Kong. And I know that, like you, my morning is his night. So that's what we're up against. But those are some of the things that we have in the works coming forward.
Sounds great. Sounds awesome. Okay, let's wrap it up there. Do you have anything else? We'll save it for next time.
Yeah, let's save it for next time. I know today was slightly tangential. I thought it was really important to get this on, get this documented. This conversation that started with my university peer and than the conversation that I had on Twitter with ALW. So, and I think now that it's documented here, we can share this and try to develop more interest in it, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, get the dialogue going. All right, thanks for your time.
Yep, thank you for having me.